Well, of course, the work I'm doing there, I started in 1988. I found a team of Palestinians and a team of Israelis that I felt we shared the same perspectives, and I brought that both teams to Switzerland so we could intensively work together and develop a team that could work together. So we've been working together for about 12 years. No, we haven't solved the problem in the Middle East, the violence, but we do have 1,000 schools in Israel now functioning in harmony with our principles. So if we look 30 years into the future, I think our work, I would hope that it would make a big contribution. In addition to that, I've worked with the police. We've worked with all the doctors in refugee camps in Palestine. So no, we haven't solved all of the violence there yet, but we're making contributions to the society. And just today, in fact, this lunch I had with a woman who has access to Shimon Peres, and he's got a copy of my book on his desk. And she has access to him, and now we're going to be talking about concretely what we can do now at the political level to get them to start thinking and communicating differently. So you never know.
But don't both sides have the same need? Don't they both want the same piece of land? I mean, how do you resolve the
As I
specific...
define needs, they both have the same needs, there's no question about it. But the same piece of land is not a need, that's a strategy, you see. So that's why, yes, if you think, how can that be solved? It can't be. But if you do what I do when I do mediation, I don't even talk about how to divide up the land until there's a connection at the need level, to get both sides to see that they have the same need. Now they'll start wanting now to justify why they have the right to the land. And in my mediations, I would say, but what are our needs? Let's look at the needs, you see. You know, that's been argued for how many centuries? We're not going to solve, who has the right on that basis. But if we can get both of you clear what your needs are, we can meet everybody's needs. But when you look at what we call these communications that they have, it's not I've been to one of those organized by the Swedish government that the Swedish Service got in an island. They got some top people from Israel, Palestine, Iraq, Jordan, and they asked me to help in this. But they did it like most of these communications are done. You could see ahead of time nobody's going to change anything. They're for the press. They're not really human interactions. In fact, they're usually not even looking at each other when the other person's talking. They're off with their own people, what they're going to say back. They're not even listening. So it's not a kind of communication. Like the Norwegian guy that grabbed the Israeli and the Palestinian and brought them into his house for a weekend got further than with all the years of these kind of negotiations. So what I would do is and they're trying to see in Colombia right now, my colleague who's here from Colombia right now, the president knows of our work, the top senators in the peace thing. They would like us to be in a room with the leaders from all sides, not with the usual kind of communication, but with my help to connect at the need level, to see each other as human beings, get rid of all this rhetoric.
What would you do then? Because there's a certain diplomatic protocol, and I know you would escape it.
I'm saying they can do that if they want, but if they really want my help, I would say, let's just get into a room and let me do what I did with these chiefs in Nigeria. See, 1/4 of the population killed in 1 year. A Christian tribe and a Muslim tribe. I start with, I'd like to hear from either side whose needs are not being met in this conflict. A Christian chief screams across the table, "You people are murderers!" They scream back, "You've been dominating us for 80 years, we're not going to tolerate it." You see, I ask for needs. They're giving me enemy images.
Right.
My job is to translate these judgments into needs. So I said to the chief who screamed murderer, "Chief, are you saying that your need for safety isn't met at the moment and you want some agreement that no matter what the conflict, no violence would be used?" He thought for a minute. "That's exactly what I'm saying." Well, that's exactly what he wanted to say, but he didn't have need language. He could only call them names.
Right.
So I said, would a chief on this side please say back what his needs are? chief on the other side screams, "Then why did you kill my son?" I said, "Chief, we'll get to that in a moment, but would you please just first tell me what his needs are?" He couldn't. I had to repeat the needs. I had to repeat them 3 times. Finally, he hears it.
Right.
Then I translate his judgments into a need. I get this side to hear it. Just to get that far took about an hour because they kept screaming at each other. But after 1 hour of my just translating judgments into needs, one of the chiefs that hadn't spoken jumped up and looked at me and said, because they spoke Hausa, a language I don't speak, so I had to wait for my translator. I thought I had stepped on a cultural moray or something. But when I heard the message, I loved it. The translator said, "The chief says we can't learn this in one day, to communicate this way. If we know how to communicate this way, we don't have to kill each other, you see." So it took people in a totally different culture about an hour to see that if you can just say what your needs are, get rid of these enemy images, we can resolve the conflicts. So yes, in Israel and Palestine, the big problem would be, you see, it took my colleagues 6 months to get both chiefs into that room. And not both chiefs, there was about 12 on each side. 6 months he went back and forth to both sides, using our training to empathize with the fears that kept them from wanting to get together. After 6 months, he got them into the room, and then it wasn't that hard to find a resolution, a peaceful resolution. So in Israel and Palestine, there are some real serious issues. Not so much Jerusalem, but water. Water is very scarce, and it doesn't get put out in the press much, but especially with Syria. That's one of the main issues with Syria, the water. Even that's quite resolvable if you could get it down to that level and out of all the rhetoric.
Right.
I guess oftentimes people are just attached to the strategies more than their needs. I mean,
Well, of course, and especially in our political life, your strategy depends on whether you're going to get the money to sustain yourself economically, because the strategy depends whether you get the lobby money and so forth and so on.
Right.
So yes, people get very addicted to the strategies and lose connection with what needs are being met.